Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 30 of the Hockey Variety Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm actually recording on Monday and not Tuesday. And the reason why is, my recording schedule just wouldn't have worked well before the games start tomorrow, because round two actually starts tomorrow, which is crazy. No days between the end of the first round and the start of the second round. Game seven between the Rangers and the Devils starts in 45 minutes. Puck drops probably about an hour from when I'm done, or from right now, the time I'm recording this. So, I am going to do my round two picks, at least the ones I can make in this episode. I'm going to talk about all of the craziness that has happened since Saturday's episode, because yesterday might have been one of the craziest days in playoff hockey ever. And there was only two games, which is crazy. And even Saturday night was pretty nuts as well. So it was a crazy weekend. I had a great weekend watching hockey. I had to do a bit of work yesterday, and I worked out a ton. I had a very active weekend. I'm preparing for this marathon. I had a good 13K run yesterday, and that's just the beginning. I'm gonna have to be able to easily double that distance in a few months. I've been working hard at that. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, tons of craziness happening in the NHL. And since this is probably the last episode I can make before the draft lottery, I'm going to do one last little quick preview for the draft lottery. So I just decided to take up the playoff bracket from the NHL website just to kind of break down all of the craziness that has happened. I also have the NHL app open on my phone so I can keep track. So let's start with the Devils and the Rangers. So on Saturday night, the Rangers, they showed up. They got the job done. Akira Schmid looking a little more like what we expected, but the Rangers showed up. They needed a big game at home, and that's exactly what they did. They beat the Devils 5-2. Shesterkin, fantastic as always. 34 saves on 36 shots. He's been their best player. He's kept them in this. He's very emotional. You can tell he was very frustrated in those losses, those three straight losses against the Devils. And, he was their best player on Saturday night, and he got some goal support too. So game 7 is tonight. I wish I could record this after, but it wouldn't have worked out, unfortunately. So I am going to try to incorporate that series into the preview a little bit. Nothing new on the Carolina front. They are still waiting to see who they play, so I'll just kind of skip over them. And then let's talk about the Leafs. Okay, so the Leafs, they did it. They did it. It was crazy, And I was thinking, the most poetic way for them to do this would be to win in a game 7. And then I thought about it, okay, so they ended up winning and beating Tampa Bay Lightning in overtime in game 6. And, you think back to last year against Tampa, that game 6 overtime loss last year, that was a big momentum shift, I thought, because Toronto had a 3-2 series lead going into game 6 last year. Tampa wins in overtime, and then we all know they won in game 7 after that. And then Toronto prevented that prophecy from being re-fulfilled, I guess, because they got the job done in overtime. John Tavares, yeah, good for them. That was a fantastic hockey game. Back and forth, nail biter. Samsonov, Ilya Samsonov, so good. That was the best game I've seen him play. And I think that was huge, because I didn't really know what to make of him, especially after that game 1. He seemed to slowly find his footing, and then game 6, that was just like, wow. So I think that game 6 2-1 overtime win, that's just a huge confidence booster, I think, for Samsonov, and that is really going to play a part when I make my prediction against their matchup for their matchup against the Florida Panthers. Yeah, the Panthers. Crazy. So I watched that game yesterday too. I know I'm jumping to Sunday here. I'll get back to the Oilers and Saturday night, but I don't really have too much to say about that. But yeah, Florida upsetting the Boston Bruins, getting it done. They were down 3-1 in the series, and they won 3 games in a row, 2 of which were in Boston. The pressure cooker's done. gonna have to make supper after this podcast. Okay, so yeah, Florida. I'm so happy for them, really. And that's nothing against Boston. It's just I when it's David and Goliath, I like seeing David come through, right? So you know that was a crazy game as well. And yeah, the bees, they've got some questions. I mean, this is a huge upset. This is right up there with Tampa getting swept in 2018, if you ask me. Um, this is a team that was um, so dominant in the regular season. They what lost 4 games at home in regulation in the regular season, and they dropped 3 at home against the Florida Panthers. It's crazy. So yeah, crazy to see the Boston Bruins are out, and going into these playoffs, if you told me the second round in the Atlantic, if you told me the second round would be Boston versus Tampa, I'd be like, okay, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Two teams that are seen as contenders, even though Tampa was looking kind of down going into the playoffs. If it was Boston and Tampa, I'd be like, okay, yeah. If you told me it was Boston and Toronto, I'd be like, okay, wow, that's cool. Good for the Leafs, right? They get to take down this team that they've had such a tough time with in the playoffs for years. That would be a good series, and I wouldn't be too surprised if it was Boston and Toronto. But if you told me it was Florida and Toronto, I'd be like, what? And this is what's happening. What a fun second round this is starting to look out to be. Like, honestly. Toronto, Florida. I don't even know who I'm going to pick as a winner. Well, I do know. I'll get to that later. But I am going to watch as much of that series as I can. That looks like so much fun. Florida's a really fun team to watch. If you haven't watched the Panthers, watch the Panthers. And they're going to have a lot of eyes on them playing Toronto in this round. Just such a big market against a pretty small market. Yeah, super exciting. Also, the Florida Panthers not allowing, what was it, non-U.S. citizens at their home games. So pretty much like they don't want Toronto fans at the Florida games. I don't like it when teams do that. I know a lot of people don't like it. But hey, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out, I guess, right? Florida's gonna need all the help they can get against Toronto. Toronto is a very good team, and they're coming off a game that might have just completely galvanized this team. That huge Game 6 win, that was insane. That was such a crazy game. But hey, you can see the same thing about Florida. They just took down the best regular season team of all time, arguably. So yeah, you got 2 very confident teams going in. That's going to be a very fun series to watch. Okay, let's go over to the West. We'll start in the Pacific here. So Vegas was waiting to see who they would play in the second round, and it's the Edmonton Oilers. As I predicted, Edmonton got the job done. I wasn't expecting it to be such a close game, 5-4, but they did it. I didn't watch any of that game, actually. I think I was in bed already. It was a little bit of a late one for me. I'm getting kind of old. But I knew Edmonton would get it done. If it wasn't in Game 6, they would get it done in Game 7 at home. And they got it done in LA. I mean, LA just looked done. That was pretty much it. From the bits of the series I did get to watch. Yeah, so we got Vegas and Edmonton in the second round. I think this is what a lot of people predicted. And yeah, that's what we're getting. So anyways, in the Central, Dallas won their series. They were waiting for the winner of Colorado and Seattle to see who they would play. We were all waiting for Colorado to, win that series, get the job done. They won in Seattle. They come home, right? It's just a matter of time. No, Seattle, they did it. That was, to me, I know the Panthers game was crazy. I really, really enjoyed that Seattle Colorado game. That was a great hockey game. Just watching Seattle just hang on at the end. That was just such an intense last few minutes. Blocking shots like crazy. Jamie Alexiak, I gotta say, I was very impressed by Alexiak. Because everyone's gonna be praising Bjorkstrand. He had a fantastic night. Grubauer deserves a ton of praise, not just for Game 7, but for the whole series. But to me, Jamie Alexiak was the guy who kept that game 2-1. He had some monstrous blocks. He had some great defensive plays. honestly, what a performance by him and his teammates. Like, and I think what we see here is like Colorado, they've got the superstars, they didn't have the depth, and I know they had injuries. I know they had sketchy situations going on with Nichushkin, but Seattle has the depth, seriously. And if Seattle has guys that get hurt, like McCann got hurt, they got they got a pretty strong pipeline right now. So I think Seattle's depth came through. I'm loving this redemption tour from Grubauer. Seriously, that has to be one of the best stories so far in the playoffs. This guy up against a team that pretty much gave up on him in free agency a couple years ago. They went with Darcy Kemper, and they said, "So long, Grubauer. We're not going to give you an extension." Grubauer signs in Seattle, has a tough time in both regular seasons. He wasn't great this season, and he's come through in the playoffs. I love it. And this is a guy who he lost the job in the playoffs for Washington like 5 years ago. That sounds like so long ago now, but I remember Grubauer came into the playoffs. He was starting for Washington in 2018, and Washington lost their first two. Grubauer didn't look great. They bring in Holtby, and the rest is history. They go on to win the Stanley Cup. So, Grubauer wasn't really like the most proven playoff goaltender. He had some okay runs with Colorado, but he couldn't stay healthy. And then this round, fantastic. I think he's been their best player the whole series. This team just has so much depth, and I'm so happy for Seattle. Seriously, I'm rooting for this team big time. And them versus Dallas, a bit of a random matchup. But I just want you to look at the 9 teams that are remaining. The 9 teams at the time of recording this. This is really fun. This is fun, because like the teams you're kind of expecting to win the cup, like Boston, like Colorado, I'll throw Tampa in there too. Like, they're all gone. I mean, of the teams that are remaining, the most recent team to win a cup was Carolina, and that was in 2006. So we're going to see a team win the cup this year that hasn't won in a while. And there's even a few teams here that have never won a cup. Seattle's never won a cup. Vegas has never won a cup. It feels like Toronto has never have, but has been since the 1960s. It's almost like they haven't. Florida's never won a cup. They've been to a cup final. So yeah, very exciting. I'm really happy with the teams that are remaining. In terms of like the boring teams you kind of expect to win at this point, maybe Dallas, maybe Vegas, maybe Carolina. They've all kind of been in the picture for a while, so there's a pretty okay chance that we see one of these exciting teams like Edmonton or Seattle or Florida or Toronto win the cup. How crazy is it that one of the 2 conference finalists in the East is either going to be Toronto or Florida? I love that. That's so exciting. So, yeah, anyways, I'm going to do my very crappy preview. Okay, I'm not looking too much into this. I'm not the hockey guy. I'm not going to go totally nuts into this, but I'm going to look at the 3 series that are locked in right now. I want to just talk about a player that I think has been their best player so far. And there's even one series where I couldn't really decide, so I did 2 from each team, but let's start with Dallas and Seattle. Now, I didn't get to watch a whole lot of Dallas, Minnesota, but Roope Hintz, he has 12 points in, what was it, 6 games they played? Yeah, 12 points in 6 games. He's the leading point scorer in the playoffs right now. 5 goals, 7 assists. Unreal. He's been clutch. Gonna have to watch that top line for Dallas if you're Seattle. But again, Seattle has the depth. If they can shut down that line, the second line, third line, fourth line for Seattle can come through. Seriously, these guys mean business. Grubauer has to be my MVP, definitely. Now he's 4-3, but he's got a 9.29, which definitely got boosted after that big win last night. And he has a shutout as well, which is phenomenal. I don't even know what game that was in. I'm gonna kind of backtrack. Was it game 5? Nope. Was it game? No, it wasn't game 4. It must have been earlier on in the series. Oh, it must have been game 1. Hang on a second. Okay, so Grubauer did not have a shutout. I must have been looking at like Ottinger's row in the stats or something like that. But anyways, he's got a 9.29. He might as well have had a shutout in a game or 2 because he's phenomenal. He might as well have had a shutout last night because he was so good. In fact, Colorado even they thought they tied it 2-2, but it was offside. And I was watching that play in full too, and I was like, I think that might have been offside, and it turns out it was. So there you go. Philip Grubauer, the redemption tour is here. He's been fantastic. Bjorkstrand was unreal in that game 7. I think we just saw a new clutch player in the league just kind of emerge out of the blue. And as a fan of the Columbus Blue Jackets, I'm very happy to see Bjorkstrand go on to have some success. There are some really likable guys in that Seattle roster, and I am definitely rooting for them all the way. Seriously. If they win a cup, I'm grabbing myself a Seattle jersey, 100%. Okay, so from Vegas and Edmonton, this is one where I had a tough time picking an MVP for Edmonton because they've had some really clutch players. And shout out to Ekholm as well. Ekholm has been a big reason why Evan Bouchard has been so good in that first round and down the stretch as well. So MVP for Vegas. Now, I went with Chandler Stevenson. You could go with Mark Stone. And in fact, the fact that Mark Stone came back from injury and has put up 8 points in 5 games is great. And he didn't look good in game 1 either. So, a lot of this was, throughout those next 4 games. So, because I'm pretty sure Winnipeg won game 1. But Chandler Stevenson, he's been great. Mark Stone, he's been great. I didn't watch much of the Winnipeg series. I'm not going to pretend like I've been following these guys too much. Laurent Brossoit has a 914. I looked it up beforehand. So he's been pretty good considering Vegas obviously doesn't have Leonard. They don't have Logan Thompson. I almost said Theodore. He's not. Jose Theodore. No. They don't have Thompson. They've got Quick, kind of in the back. They could use him if they need. Same with Aiden Hill. But Brossoit's been giving him adequate goaltending. But he's going to have to be really good against this Edmonton offense, especially when they're on the power play. Vegas is going to have to reduce the amount of penalties they take because Edmonton's power play has been just so scary, really. My MVP for Edmonton has been that power play monster of theirs, Evan Bouchard. 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points, and 8 of those points are power play points. Just insane. And the reason I went with him is because you're getting that production and he's a blue liner. Nuts. I think he's been their best player, but Draisaitl's been great too. 7 goals in 6 games. And that's what he does. He puts the puck in the back of the net. 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points. Second in league scoring in the playoffs. He's tied with, I think, Tkachuk and maybe someone else. Maybe Marner, I think. We'll find out on the next slide, most likely. But, Draisaitl's been great. McDavid's been McDavid. He was a little invisible that first game, and then, boom, he was fantastic. So, tough to pick an MVP for them. My concern is that Skinner's got a bit of a low save percentage, just a tad bit below 900, I think. He might be at 900 even. But Edmonton might just be able to outscore their problems like they did last round and in last year's playoffs until they ran into Colorado. So, that's it for the West. And then in the Eastern Conference, I'm only going to look at Florida and Toronto. I'm not going to do a preview for this undecided second round matchup because we don't know who's won New York and New Jersey at this point. Totally messed up the grammar on that sentence. It's fine. Let's look at Florida and Toronto. So, Florida, my MVP for them is Matthew Tkachuk. 11 points in 7 playoff games, 5 goals, 6 assists. Real difference maker, especially in that game 7. He was the guy. He was there. Though Brandon Montour was fantastic as well in that game. Carter Verhaeghe getting the OT winner. But Matthew Tkachuk was there. He had a breakaway in overtime. He's creating these chances. He's doing his thing. He's playing a lot like his dad did. So, he's my guy. Bobrovsky looked pretty good in that game 7. I thought goaltending might be a bit of a question mark, but we'll have to wait and see, right? Bobrovsky, I think he's kind of underrated in some sense. Like, I think we forget how clutch Bobrovsky can be. I don't know. Florida, exciting team. Toronto, I went with Mitch Marner. 2 goals, 9 assists, 11 points. So he was the other guy that had 11 points. And he's also got a league leading +9 in the playoffs. I know plus minus, whatever, but Mitch Marner's been great defensively. He's been great offensively. I thought that deserved a bit of recognition. Matthews is up there too. I'm pretty sure he has 5 goals in the playoffs. John Tavares has looked great. Ryan O'Reilly's been a difference maker. You can just see it out there. Toronto's a different Toronto. You know, they're deep. Samsonov's got his confidence going. So, yeah, don't really have too much more to say. It's just really, really exciting matchup that's going to be. And that starts tomorrow, I believe. Let's double check. I got the Seattle schedule on my NHL app. I was kind of backtracking there. Okay, tomorrow night, yeah, we got Florida and Toronto in Toronto, 4 p.m. Pacific, and then Seattle and Dallas, 6:30 p.m. Pacific in Dallas. Okay, drum roll. Here are my picks for the second round. Okay, here we go. Boom. Okay, so kind of going with my heart on a few of these, mainly the first one. We'll get this out of the way. I got Seattle over Dallas, and I'm going to say in 6. I'm completely insane. I know, but hey, I doubted Seattle the first round. I feel like if I doubted them again, they would end up winning. So, I don't know. I mean, hopefully I didn't just jinx them by picking them, but I don't know. They're a really deep team. Both teams have fantastic goaltending, so expect some really low-scoring games. I'm kind of expecting that to happen, like 2-1, 3-2 kind of deal. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of overtime in this matchup, but yeah, I got Seattle. I'm going to say 6, and I'm going with my heart on that one, and I would love to see that happen. Edmonton was my cup pick if you watched a few videos back, so of course I'm going to pick them over Vegas. I'm going to say 7, sure, why not? 2 very good teams. Vegas could easily win this series as well. I definitely not ruling them out, and that's why I think it's going to go to 7. But yeah, I got to stick with Edmonton. They're my cup pick. They haven't really given me a reason not to, except for maybe goaltending, but we'll see. You know, Campbell was fantastic in his one appearance. He arguably saved their season. So maybe they could turn to Campbell if Stuart Skinner starts game 1 a little shaky. Maybe if they lose game 1. So yeah, I'm going with Edmonton. I'm going in 7. Vegas has a home ice advantage, so that's something to pay attention to. I got Toronto in 6 over Florida. This is another tough one. I don't know. I like the Leafs, really. I got more confidence in the goaltending at the time I'm recording this, at least. You got a couple of Russians, and yeah, I'm taking Samsonov. I think the Leafs, they're gonna go on a bit of a run here. I think that game 6 win against Tampa is gonna really fuel this team to at least the conference finals. So yeah, and you know what? They need a big run too, especially if they want to hang on to Matthews. I've said this on the podcast many times. The Leafs need to make at least a Stanley Cup Finals, in my opinion, if they want any hopes of re-signing Austin Matthews. And why not this year, really? They're already on a bit of a heater. Keep it going. But hey, I could see Florida taking this. I wouldn't mind seeing Florida take this either. I like the Cats. Okay, so in terms of the last matchup, you know, obviously it's not decided yet. So, yeah, but, you know, if it's Carolina, New Jersey, I kind of like Carolina. I do. The experience is there. It's the experienced team versus the inexperienced team. I know New Jersey has some experienced guys like Palat, like, you know, like Hamilton, like even Timo Meier. He's been on a few playoff runs with the Sharks. But yeah, I'm taking Carolina. I like that matchup more in favor of Carolina, especially now that you have Frederik Andersen healthy. And if New York ends up meeting them in the second round, you know, I'm kind of going with New York. It's tough to explain. I mean, Carolina's pretty banged up too. That's the thing. They don't have Teravainen. They don't have Svechnikov. You know, I know they got Anderson back, which is nice. I'm probably missing someone too. They have so many friggin' injuries. I'm missing someone important. I mean, they don't have Pacioretty, right? They haven't had Pacioretty in a while. They've had to overcome that. But I don't know. I kind of like New York in that matchup. I like Shesterkin. So, yeah, there's my kind of split for that series. It really depends on the matchup. I don't want to give you in how many games, but, you know, if I were to take a guess, I would say I could see both of these games going the distance. 6 or 7. Let's say 7. So, yeah, okay. Last thing. Final draft lottery section on this podcast. I like to think I've been a pioneer in tracking the draft lottery in the podcast sphere with all 7 of my subscribers, one of which being my burner account, so it's more like 6, but it's fine. And this might be the last time I get to talk about it prior to the draft lottery. It's sad. It's sad. But, whenever there's the draft lottery, there's always outrage, right? Oh, Bettman, blah, blah, blah. Okay, first of all, Bettman's not a puppet master behind the scenes, okay? It's probability. How do I know this? I don't know this, okay? I'm not a crazy person. I don't know what to say. Like, Bettman's not pulling the strings, increasing teams' odds. He's not dumb, okay? But people always get mad, and people feel like, oh, my team got screwed over, blah, blah, blah. And I got a couple stats that I just want people to keep in mind prior to the draft lottery. So the first thing, okay, and this is just how probability works. I'm a math teacher. I know how this works. Okay, I'm a math guy. Yeah, so there's a 31.5% chance that either Arizona, Philly, Washington, Detroit, St. Louis, or Vancouver will get Connor Bedard. That's a combined percentage, obviously, right? Not each of those teams has like a 30% chance. No. Now, the reason why I want to bring that up is, yes, it's more likely that one of the top, or should I say bottom 5 teams, so Anaheim, Columbus, Chicago, San Jose, Montreal, it's way more not way more likely, but it's more likely one of those teams get them. But 31% is not nothing, okay? So if one of those 6 teams gets the first overall pick in the draft lottery, don't completely lose your mind, because 31.5% chance is not terribly low. It's low. It is unlikely one of those teams will get Bedard. But if one of them does win the draft lottery, don't lose it, because 31.5%, it's not that low, okay? It's not, all right? Speaking of that, now Anaheim, I almost said Arizona. Anaheim has the best odds at getting the number 1 pick at 25.5%. Okay, I just realized my percentages on my screen don't add up, but it's fine. Now, with that in mind, there is a 74.6% chance that Anaheim doesn't get the first overall pick, okay? And I'm only saying that because, a lot of the times the team that has the best odds, they don't get the player and they don't get the first overall pick, and then people freak out. Okay, there's a better chance that Anaheim doesn't get the first overall pick than they do. If we're looking at an individual team basis, Anaheim has the best odds, but is still unlikely that they get Bedard mathematically, okay? So I'm just pointing that out. If Anaheim doesn't get the first overall pick, and based on the process, they're the team that should have the highest odds, and that's why they do, but you can't really be too upset if they don't get the first overall pick, because mathematically they don't have, there's a better chance they don't get Bedard than they do. So anyways, last thing I'm going to do on this podcast today is I've got the Tankathon app, okay? And it's just like, it's kind of silly playing around with what if scenarios, but I always find myself heading back to this website and simulating a few draft lotteries, okay? So pretty much what this does is this lets you simulate a draft lottery, right? So you hit the simulate lottery button, and they do a draft lottery for you, and then you can be like, what if? Totally doesn't matter, but I don't know. If you got time to kill, sure, why not? So here's what I'm gonna do, okay? Now, what I initially did was I did a simulation, and then I put it in the slide, and I was like, well, I want this to be fresh in my head, and I want to think about this for like half an hour or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to simulate the lottery, and while it's fresh in my head, we'll just talk about what would happen if that is what happened. And I'm only going to do this once. I'm not going to do this like 3 times. I'm going to simulate the lottery once, and we're going to take a look at what the draft lottery situation is going to look like. So I'll be right back. In case you're wondering about the Ottawa, Arizona thing there at number 12, if Ottawa wins the draft lottery, they get their first overall pick this year, and that first, I believe, moves to next year. if Ottawa does not win the draft lottery, it's Arizona's. Just for clarification, okay, here we go. Draft lottery time. And here we go. Here is the mock draft lottery. And this one turned out pretty interesting, okay? Like, I did quite a few simulations like in the last few weeks. This one's just like a one-off one. Let's pretend and let's take a look. So the Arizona Coyotes win the draft lottery. They get the first overall pick. Now Anaheim drops one spot to the number 2 spot, and the reason why they didn't drop farther is because the other team that moved up, because there's pretty much 2 lotteries that happen. The Buffalo Sabres moved up 10 spots to the number 3 pick, which is pretty crazy, I think. And then you have Columbus dropping to 4th, Chicago dropping to 5th, San Jose dropping to 6th, Montreal dropping to 7th, and then you have Philly at 8, Washington at 9, Detroit at 10, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so, Arizona Coyotes with Connor Bedard. Like I said in one of my podcasts a few episodes back, if Arizona got Bedard, they should be looking at going for a playoff spot right away. They've got the cap space. They can make some moves in the offseason to make that roster better and build around Connor Bedard. Yeah, that would do a ton. Now, Anaheim with the 2nd overall pick, they're going to get a high draft pick anyways. Number 2, nothing wrong with that. They have a lot of good young players. Another good young player to develop, then yeah, that's awesome. A Fantilli, sure, he gets to play with his Team Canada teammates in Mason McTavish and Zetterberg eventually. Is that his name? Zetterberg? I think that's his name. Zellweger? I think it's Zellweger, the kid that's playing in the WHL. So that's really exciting for Anaheim, yeah. And then Buffalo Sabres, a team that is on the upswing, getting the 3rd overall pick. That would be nuts. You just inject another talented young player into that roster. Now, it makes me wonder, would Buffalo pick best player available, or would they try to go for a certain position based on what spots in their roster they're going to fill? Or are they looking for a guy who might be someone they can, put into the lineup later on? Like, are they going to look for someone who is ready to go in the NHL right now? Or are they looking for someone who, you might be looking to add him into the roster a few years down the road? Would Buffalo be a good spot for Michkov, who is going to commit to the KHL for a while? Who knows? I'm really curious on what team decides to pull the trigger on Michkov, considering he's going to be in the K for a while, kind of like a Kaprizov sort of deal. Because there's arguments that he could go as high as 2nd. There's arguments that he could go as low as, I'm going to say 5th or 6th. I think if he dropped below 5th, that'd be kind of crazy. But, it really depends on the team's timeline. So this would be pretty crazy. As a Sharks fan, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be totally happy about this, but hey, I like the Yotes. I wouldn't mind seeing the Yotes finally winning a draft lottery for, I think, the first time in their history. That would be pretty cool. So, we'll have to wait and see on Monday how things go. I will be doing a live reaction to this. Whether or not I post the recording of the video of that, it really depends on if the Sharks win, because I will be losing my mind. We'll have to wait and see. And that is it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have to watch Game 7 between the Rangers and the Devils right away here, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for listening. Please let me know in the comments what are your round 2 predictions, especially if you're watching this after that Carolina series has been, or that New York, New Jersey series has been decided. Let me know all of your round 2 picks in the comments. I would love to hear. Please tell me how wrong I am, because I know I'm going to be wrong at least, I'm going to say 3 of them. Thank you so much for listening. It is appreciated. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube if you have not subscribed already. Be sure to leave a like on the YouTube video that you're listening to right now. Be sure to leave a like on that. Very active on Instagram, as always. Hockey Variety Podcast on Instagram, Hockey Variety Podcast on Facebook. And I will probably be talking to you guys on Monday following the draft lottery. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get something in between now and then. But yeah, draft lottery. Can't wait. It's going to be super exciting. Yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll talk to you next time.